Greetings and welcome back. It's your host, Gabe Morales. We are continuing with our coverage of San Quentin Prison. In our last video, we talked about the usually strong alliance between the Mexican Mafia and the Aryan Brotherhood. On the flip side of the coin, the West Familia did have a loose alliance with the Black Guerrilla family, such as when they addressed NF shot caller Daira Medina about the need to opt the pigs, or when they wrote a revolutionary love poem for Nuestra Familia Mexicana Padre Juan Lips Valdez. While some under the Babo Sosa regime, like Death Row Joe, later stated that they were never a revolutionary group with any raza concepts, the original Nuestra Familia Mexicana Constitution, largely written by founder Gonzalo Chalo Hernandez, clearly shows under Article 1 that the purpose of the organization was to assist the progress and bring more unity to Mexican people. Under Article 2, it had an agenda of social consciousness inside, and Chalo in his memoirs stated that they were to relay that causa out to free society. In particular, Chalo wanted to educate Chicano youth about raza unity concepts in direct contradiction to what the more criminally minded individuals in the organization pushed later in the mid to late 1970s. As I've stated before, because of abuse of Nuestra Familia on their own people, inside the Pintas and via their street regiments, many of the members supported an impeachment effort against Babo and Death Row Joe under Black Bob Vasquez and Brown Bob Viramontes. And some of these revolutionary ideals were brought back into the organization via such documents as the XIV bonds, even if they often did it via criminal activities. On July 21st, 1971, Correctional Officer Leo Davis was murdered while trying to save the life of an inmate at the hospital at San Quentin. The inmate was scheduled to testify against the Soledad brothers. Two BGF suspects, Lawrence Justice and Earl Gibson, were charged, tried, and convicted of Davis's murder, but appealed and later gained acquittal. Black revolutionary George Lester Jackson, one of the Soledad brothers mentioned in my correctional training facility video, died at only 28 years old after fatally being shot by a guard. Jackson was killed on August 21st, 1971, during a bloody escape attempt from San Quentin's Adjustment Center high security unit while he made a break for the prison gate, according to authorities. As I've discussed in some of my previous BGF videos, that single day of violence continues to generate various opinions on what actually happened. Some still say that it was a conspiracy by administrators to assassinate a revolutionary who tried to change the system. Others think that it was just a desperate attempt to inflict as much violence as possible and become a martyr in a case of radical suicide. Investigations showed that Jackson's attorney, Stephen Bingham, visited Jackson on August 21st, 1971, and that his paralegal and Black Panther supporter, Benita Anderson, signed out of the East Gate 1430 hours. Bingham later stated that he borrowed Anderson's tape recorder during his legal visit with Jackson, which is believed to have held a gun. There is some confusion about the incident as the escort was right after day shift to swing shift changeover. After Jackson's visit, CO Frank De Leon escorted him back into the adjustment center, where he's being held due to his accusation of killing the CO at CTF. Policy stated that all inmates were to be searched before re-entry. Probationary officer CO Paul Kranzanis was working with trustees in the adjustment center when Jackson allegedly pulled out an Astra 9mm semi-automatic on Sergeant Urbano Rubiaco that was hidden underneath his hair and said, "All right, gentlemen, this is it. I'm taking over. The dragon has come." If you read his book, Blood in My Eye, Jackson talks about being self-taught, a bastardized style of martial arts. The book was finished just a few weeks before his death. And third paragraph from the end, he prophesies, the dragon is coming. At approximately 1500 hours, according to CDCA reports, Acting Sergeant McCrae was told to open up the cells of Jackson's comrades while the gun was pointed at him. Since McCrae stated he didn't know how to do it, Jackson ordered Rubiaco to open up the bar box, and for McCrae to use a Folger Adams key to open the door grill. CO De Leon was then shot at close range by Jackson and had his neck cut by Hugo Yogi Bear Pimenel, even as he pled for his life, and told them, "I have 5 children." Rubiaco, Kranzanis, and Officer Charles Beckenridge's throats were cut. Sergeant Jerry Graham was killed in a cell with a gunshot to the head. Kranzanis was shot as well as neck cut and died. Cray's head was covered by the BGF during the incident and survived his throat being cut and later testified in court. Two white tear tenders were also killed, having their throats slashed. They were not Aryan Brotherhood members, but were said to be AB supporters. As I stated, Jackson made a run for it out of the adjustment center with Johnny Spain and was killed. It is my understanding that Spain was found in some bushes by the chapel and convicted of his crimes but appealed. The situation was out of control. Lieutenant Eugene Zymar was the first to arrive on the scene, and his staff were horrified by the carnage. CO Dick Nelson lived on the prison grounds, and it was his day off. Nelson was told that Jackson had escaped, and Nelson grabbed a 45 caliber Thompson submachine gun and ran into the AC. He fired off 5 rounds and was able to save the lives of Breckenridge and Rubiaca and take back the unit. Convicts were inside were ordered to strip down and laid face down handcuffed in front of the AC, as seen here. Jackson's attorney, Steve Bingham, fled the country and finally surrendered in 1984, almost exactly 12 years later. It is interesting to me that Jackson's paralegal, Vanita Anderson, was not charged or even called as a witness at Bingham's trial. Black nationalist and radical revolutionary Angela Davis was acquitted of charges in aiding both George Jackson's little brother, Jonathan Jackson's bloody Marin County courthouse takeover and any involvement in George Jackson's escape. The San Quentin Six were inmates Fleeta Drumgo, David Johnson, Hugo Pinnell, Johnny Spain, Willie Tate, and Luis Salamantes, who were charged with criminal actions related to the August 21st, 1971 incident involving Jackson. The trial of the San Quentin Six cost more than $2 million, lasted 16 months, and at the time was the longest trial in California history. Of the 6 defendants, only one was convicted of murder, Johnny Spain, who was found guilty in the shooting deaths of guards Frank De Leon and Jerry Graham, supposedly after Jackson handed him the weapon. Hugo Pinnell was convicted of cutting the throats of guards Charles Breckenridge and Urbano Rubiaco. David Johnson was convicted of assaulting Breckenridge, but was later acquitted. Drumgo, Tate, and Talamantes were acquitted on all charges. In 1974, La M and the BGF clashed several times. On December 8, 1974, Mexican Mafia members Black Dan Barella, Sailor Boy Gonzalez hit black convict Marcel Thomas, San Quentin's East Block. Thomas reported his injuries and survived, but this incident enraged the black prison population. December 10, 1974, blacks and Chicanos affiliated with La M squared off. Staff intervened and put together a climate control committee, which oddly enough included Black Dan Barella and Sailor Boy Gonzalez, two of the individuals who kicked off the incident. December 19, 1974, another racial disturbance occurred, which resulted in 2 black inmates being dead and 4 inmates wounded. Mexican Mafia member O.C. Aguirre was shot when he hit BGF member Arthur Harris, who died, and Zihibu Davis in the San Quentin Chow Hall meal line. In the afternoon, La M attacked again on the lower yard, and Truman Nichols was brutally killed by Black Dan Barella. No murder weapon was found, so the charges were dropped by the DA. Evidently, the weapons in the evidence locker had been tampered with. San Quentin Warden Louis Red Nelson, who was in charge of the facility from 1966 to 1974, publicly announced that the BGF and MA were separated and that ringleaders of the violence were placed in isolation. The prison went on temporary lockdown, but as soon as some of the players were let out, violence resumed. And in May 1975, the BGF retaliated against Emeros Sailor Boy Gonzalez and David Spider Arriaga. Shortly after, Paul Memo Garcia was hit in the North Block, aka the top shelf, isolated on the top tier of the North Building by the BGF. Counterattack against the BGF was then led by Emero Art Cornejo Blajos, who has since become a member of Victory Outreach for many years now. September 21st, 1975, MA hitman Ramon Mundo Mendoza attacked BGF member Robert E. Williams with a shank on San Quentin's Adjustment Center yard. BGF General Jeffrey Golden died on August 1st, 1978, after a game of touch football. Evidently, one of the players pushed him too hard, and he hit his head as he fell to the ground. The prisoners begged for medical attention, but state that the guards took their time and cleared the yard one person at a time, searching each person individually. By the time that the yard was cleared, Galton had already bled out. This enraged the BGF and many black inmates. Galton had been in prison since 1967 and was heavily influenced by George Jackson and also became a militant activist. He was convicted in May 1972 for killing a civilian laundry worker at Folsom Prison, allegedly in retaliation for Jackson's death. Baldwin was very close to BGF Captain Hugo Yogi Pinell. April 25, 1977, Aryan Brotherhood shot caller Barry Mills and another unidentified prisoner stabbed BGF member Garland Berry to death. Garland had been returned to San Quentin on a parole violation and had earlier stabbed AB member Ricky Terplinger in San Quentin's Adjustment Center. Garland had appeared in a recent news documentary about prison violence. May 18, 1977, another black inmate was stabbed, and on May 28, 1977, two whites were stabbed, and the prison was placed back on lockdown. In the late 1970s, Ernest Bud Shuja Graham established the Black August Resistance, or BAR. Graham wanted to spread the BGF to the streets via people like Stephen Kumasi Simmons, but the majority of the BGF wanted it to remain a prison-based organization and were against Graham's philosophy. For this reason, he fell out of favor. It was said that originally the BGF vowed to kill a corrections officer every year during the month of August in remembrance of the death of George Jackson, Jonathan Jackson, and Jeff Katari Galden. I do remember being told about the George Jackson Q incident and about Black August in the Corrections Academy at Galt. I believe the presenter was a Sergeant Diamond, who stated that he was there as a young CO that fatal day. He also relayed to us new recruits about the then recent death of fellow San Quentin Sergeant Hal Birchfield. Inmate Andre Somo Johnson was convicted of Birchfield's death, which occurred in San Quentin's Donner section on June 8, 1985. At that time, Jarvis Ascari Masters, Lawrence Old Man Woodard, and Rufus Zulu Willis were all members of the BGF. Willis eventually flipped as the Marine County prosecutor's main witness and was considered to be a BGF intel officer and leader at the time of Birchfield's death. Willis stated that he received a kite discussing the need to kill Birchfield. According to Willis, Masters first suggested attacking the Mexican Mafia and Aryan Brotherhood, but this idea was rejected. The BGF believed that Birchfield favored the Aryan Brotherhood in their assaults on their members. BGF president also met with members of the Crips gang to discuss their plans as a revenge for the death of one of their members named Montgomery that I believe happened by a staff shooting. An autopsy showed that Birchfield was killed by a single chest wound as he was speared through the cell bars. April 10, 1985, former NF heavy hitter Frank Joker Mendoza was hit by one of his own, Black Jess Gomez de Salas, at Q. Robert Babo Sosa and Richard Casper Castro were also hit there on orders from Glenn Hobo Holden, a former captain under the Sosa regime, but who had switched sides under the successful Black Bob Vasquez and Brown Bob Vitamontes impeachment efforts, which removed Babo. By the way, just to clarify, the recent Vice Nuestra Familia special got a lot of things wrong. Babo did not run things in the 1980s and 90s. He had very few supporters by then and was placed in protective custody yards. I know. I spoke to him. He is not among the living. He died in the early 1990s at the Bacabo facility. I'm not sure how the production company messed so many things up. Wrong dates, put things out of context, etc., as I gave them a copy of my NF book. They did a lot better on the Bulldog episode that I was featured in, but I just wanted to put that disclaimer out there. As stated in that documentary, due to some problems from the Nuestra Familia in the Fresno area and in prison, most prisioneros later split off, forming the Bulldogs prison gang. During the 1980s through 90s, San Quentin was viewed as a stronghold for the NF. Crip member Taekwon Little Feet Cox was sentenced to death in 1986 for the 1984 murder of four relatives of former NFL defensive back player Kermit Alexander. I had the lookout and getaway driver in that case, Horace Burns, on my yard at New Folsom in the late 1980s. Was involved in an escape attempt in 2000 and allegedly was involved in a physical fight with Stanley Tukey Williams, also a Crip shot caller. The Familia had several members on death row, such as after the 1992 RICO case, or by several members, James Huevo Trujillo, Herminio Spanquillo Serna, and Bobby Silent Lopez, received the death penalty for several murders they committed. The Aryan Brotherhood's Robert Scully was involved in the death of Sonoma County Sheriff's Office Deputy Frank Trejo in 1985. Scully was convicted and sent to death row, where he was often assaultive towards staff. Nazi lowrider Todd Givens was convicted of murders in 2001 and was also sent to death row, where he too was very assaultive to CDC officers. One of the main things that prison gangs do is clean house, hit their own members who have violated the rules, whether it was real or just politics. Will also hit individuals affiliated with subservient groups, sometimes called carrying out the garbage. One such incident is when the Mexican Mafia killed Jimmy Primo Palma at San Quentin's death row in 1997 for botching a hit where two former MA members were killed, but also an innocent mother and her two children, which is against normal protocol. Like I've said several times, usually the Mexican Mafia and Aryan Brotherhood backed each other up, but there have been exceptions. December 2001, longtime AB member Curtis Price was hit by La M on San Quentin's death row after he disrespected them several times. This dispute involved Ronnie and Hector Ayala, who were incarcerated on death row due to homicides committed in San Diego County. Both brothers have been major figures for the Mexican Mafia for many years and were mentioned in my recent MA update. I understand as Price was being hit, fellow AB Billy Ray Hamilton rushed to his aid. A few months later, in December 2005, the prison made national headlines again when one of the earliest Crips and one of gang founder Raymond Washington's right-hand men, Stanley Tookie Williams, was executed for the 1979 murders of 4 people during 2 robberies. The execution sparked widespread debate and protests. On January 17, 2006, Clarence Ray Allen was the last person to be executed at San Quentin. He was involved in a murder-for-hire case involving AB member Billy Ray Hamilton, who I spoke of earlier. Hamilton died of natural causes in 2007 while still being a condemned inmate. Besides the Ayala brothers, fellow Emero Jesse Bird Gonzalez from La Puente was on death row for many years following his conviction for a 1980 murder beef. After death row was shut down, he was sent to Kern Valley State Prison, where he is still housed and is 77 years old. As I mentioned in other videos, Freddie Smokey Fuyava was from Young Crowd in Linwood and killed an LA County Sheriff's Department deputy and was sentenced to death. Even though he was Samoan, he was a full-fledged MA member. While on death row, Freddie bumped heads with the Ayalas at Q and was targeted for assassination. He is currently housed at Corcoran State Prison. The movie Blood In, Blood Out, also known as Bound by Honor, is a 1993 drama film directed by Taylor Hackford from a screenplay co-written by Jimmy Santiago Baca and Floyd Metrix. The film follows the lives of 3 Chicano relatives from 1972 to 1984 and stars Jesse Borrego, Benjamin Bratt, and Damian Chapa as main characters. It also features a cameo role by Danny Trejo, actor and CDC inmate between 1965 and 1968. The warden in the film was played by the actual 1980s warden Danny Vasquez, who now works as a corrections consultant and defense expert today. Danny was also a member of the original California Prison Gang Task Force, along with Tony Casas, rest in peace, who was an advisor to American Me and warned Edward James Olmos about discrepancies in the film, which later proved to be problematic. My understanding is that the movie Blood In, Blood Out was also loosely based on the life of my mentor, Robert Moco Morel, who grew up around the Meros in the Ramona Gardens hazard housing projects, later became a cop, and was the first coordinator of the California Gang Task Force. As I recall, when director Baca invited Moco to a screening, he couldn't figure out who was who. Benjamin Bratt's character was the gang member turned the dark Latino cop who investigated the prison gang. But Moco told me he looked more like Miklo, who I guess was supposed to be based in part on Joe Morgan, somebody Moco arrested 3 times. Oh well, Bach didn't have the problems that Olmos did, and kept it fiction. And many people I know actually rate the movie better than American Me. There are many voices who feel our criminal justice system needs reform, and I agree. I have spoken about that in several episodes, including one I did on convict penology with Dr. Jeffrey Ian Ross. These reforms, however, I believe should be done with the participation of all stakeholders and not give up on Corrections 101. We can't compare ourselves to the Norway model, which is way too soft in my opinion, and does not take into consideration the huge impact that gangs have on the California system. Nor should we adapt the El Salvador model or Russian Gulag models, etc., which are very brutal and totally go against international laws and basic humanity. The California model has been covered frequently by my brother Hector Bravo on his channel, That Prison Guard.
Governor Newsom plans to transform San Quentin into a prison that focuses more on rehabilitation.
KTV's Ali Rasmus joining us now with some of the changes the governor has planned. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, some of those changes mean that all current death row inmates at San Quentin will be moved to other prisons in the state. Many of them already have. And in the future, San Quentin will no longer be a maximum security facility. Governor Newsom says he wants this prison instead to become the largest education, job training, and rehabilitation facility in the state. The governor wants San Quentin to follow a prison model used in Norway, which focuses on preparing people to return to society when their sentence is up by training them for jobs and teaching them how to live on their own.
Design capacity of over 3,000 inmates, San Quentin currently houses level 1, 2, and 3 offenders. Hope that you enjoyed this episode, try to be humble, and that you continue to remain safe and blessed. For now, this is Gabe Morales signing off for gangsters, cops, and politicians.